Have you ever wondered what it would look like if I actually got my hands on one of these scam products that I debunk?
It's showtime.
My name is Morris, and I'm dry, and this is the Morus Zero.
They raised over $1 million on Kickstarter and Indiegogo
It's a dryer from the future.
for this revolutionary new concept they'd come up with of the super fast vacuum dryer.
It might just be the fastest, gentlest dryer on Earth.
There was just one slight problem with it. It was all bullshit.
Thankfully, the Morus Zero uses vacuum technology. No, not that vacuum, space vacuum. Because just like in outer space, the water inside Morus evaporates at a lower temperature, thus requiring less heat and energy to vaporize.
The short version goes something like this. Whether the water is evaporating into air or vacuum doesn't actually change the amount of energy you need to evaporate that water, because the energy that you have to put in to evaporate the water is basically the energy to break the hydrogen bonds, and that's exactly the same whether you're evaporating into space or into air. So this thing was clearly bullshit.
Because just like in outer space, the water inside Morus evaporates at a lower temperature.
Now, bizarrely enough, Morus was one of those companies that actually tried to bite back, claiming that the concept of a vacuum dryer was not a scam, and that Morus would get down to 0.1 of an atmosphere. That's actually a pretty good vacuum. And it even made a chirpy little video doubling down on all of this.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
Traditional dryers, whether vented or heat pump, both use heat and airflow to evaporate the water on your clothes. Morus Zero not only uses those two, but adds a third factor, which is pressure. We create a low pressure environment using a large flow pump and the difference between the inlet and outlet.
To which I made the reply saying, no way is this thing a vacuum dryer. The more I think about this, the more it kind of stinks of someone selling a hairdryer and a rotating drum for a few $100.
Well, that is one magnificent prophecy, Mr. Reacher.
And notwithstanding the fact that they delivered nothing to any of their people, a year or so later, they also ran the same Kickstarter in Japan, which raised another $1 million or so. They also emphasized how this was a vacuum dryer. I mean, just look what the vacuum is doing to that cream. It must be a vacuum dryer. Well, here we are some 3 or so years later, and Walter Engler emails me saying that he's actually just received his, but he doesn't really need it anymore, and would I like it? Now, it's got to be said, Walter was a complete gent over everything here, and offered to pay the shipping and everything. But honestly, that didn't make any sense, because people support me on Patreon for exactly this sort of reason. So I said, nah, I'll be happy to pick up the shipping, which really wasn't cheap. But whatever, I needed closure on this thing. You know, how close was I to the mark on this one? I mean, are we talking...
You can imagine how much it hurts me to use the word infallible.
Oh, come on, nobody's infallible.
All right, then he's not infallible. It's just that up to now, he has never failed.
Or is it more...
Man on second, Red Sox down by a run. Peter Griffin down to his last strike. Here comes the pitch. Strike 3, and he knew it. Didn't even get the bat off his shoulder.
There it is, made in China. 100 to 120 volts. Rated power, 1,100 watts to 1,200 watts, which is about the same power as a hairdryer, curiously enough. Oh my God, boxes inside boxes. There we go. We have the vacuum dryer. Morus Zero vacuum technology, ultra fast tumble dryer, swifter, smarter, safer. We'll see about that. Well, the packaging is nice. I'll give it that. Well, here we go. And our first It's plastic. There is zero chance that this is a vacuum dryer. Zero.
Morus team, we sincerely believe that vacuum drying technology will be the future of drying clothes.
Yeah, but I mean, this is Perspex. And it's not thick Perspex either. It's millimeter? 2 millimeters probably. There's a bag of some sort. It's crap. They look like some sort of drying balls or something. And the next question, the drying tray. And I'm not seeing any seals. No, it's just a plastic tube. There is zero chance that this is actually really a vacuum dryer.
But seriously, this thing is pretty nifty. Its compact body makes it easy to move around.
Oh wow, there's a big vent on the back of it.
And because it's ventless.
A big vent which comes off, clearly it comes off. There's a don't open sign on there. There we go. Ah, okay. There's a fan on the back. Yeah, and it's just a standard computer fan. And oh, I've got to get inside this thing. Oh, there is a diagram on the bottom. And there is nothing. There is absolutely, it's right here on the bloody circuit diagram. There is nothing. There are no vacuum pumps in here at all.
Thankfully, the Morus Zero uses vacuum technology. No, not that vacuum, space vacuum.
Okay. And it's tripped my power. Okay, power on time. Oh. Right, so now I have my 3 kilovolt transformer. Ah, there we go, excellent. Auto, okay. And it's a hairdryer.
Somebody stop me!
I knew it.
I knew it.
I knew it.
Safely doing laundry in the comfort of your own home.
So on the upside, at least it's got a working clock on it. Yeah, silent this thing isn't. So my reckoning was it was just going to be a hairdryer. Now, next question. If there's a vacuum on this, I won't be able to open the door. And I can't open the door because it's locked. Okay. So let's stop that. No. Zero vacuum. Absolutely zero vacuum. So this is what a real vacuum system would look like. There you got a vacuum pump and he goes into the vacuum oven. And there you've got your vacuum gauge. That's going to tell us what our vacuum's like. And that's more or less what the door should look like, which is a fairly chunky piece of glass. So the glass there is about a centimetre or so thick. Now in the first instance, if I just close the door and put on the vacuum, let's close the bleeder valve, you'll see that we suck down a vacuum fairly quickly. We're already down, this is -1 atmosphere here, so that's basically space vacuum, so to speak. So it takes quite a time to suck something like this down, even using a fairly decent sized pump. And it'll get slower and slower as you get nearer to the very high vacuums. It's a big chamber to pump down this one. Anyway, so we kill that, and what you'll find is at this sort of vacuum, there is zero chance of actually opening this door. Absolutely zero. So let's stop that. No. And the reason for that is atmospheric pressure is about 10 tons per square metre. So even at half an atmosphere, there is absolutely zero chance of me being able, if I pull this, it'll just slide around everywhere.
And Morus claimed that it was going to get a 90% vacuum, much higher than the vacuum I have here.
So I'm going to open the bleeder valve. and we'll see when we can actually pop the door. Now, if you're lucky, you'll pop the door at about 1/10 of an atmosphere, which is about now. If you're lucky, you can pop the door about now. And, come on. So in this case, the door is stuck. But even if it's not, even with the most minor of atmospheres, you'll find you just cannot open the door. Right, there we go. So that's what a real vacuum system should look like. Okay, right, so again, if there's vacuum, I can't open the door. There is zero vacuum. There is absolutely zero vacuum on this thing.
Because just like in outer space, the water inside Morus evaporates at a lower temperature.
Why, that can't be right. In their original Kickstarter ad, they had a demonstration of water boiling in the Morus due to the low pressure at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like 40 Celsius. Along with a caption saying, the water has a lower boiling point at low pressure. Morus Zero uses a compact, high-performance vacuum pump to allow water to boil at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The water in the boiling state has a very high evaporation rate, and Morus Zero uses this principle to accelerate the drying speed.
Stop that. No, zero vacuum.
Whoa. You are so busted.
You know, this really doesn't concern you.
And then they had cream being inflated by the vacuum. An amazing demonstration to prove that Morus really did have a vacuum inside of it. Call me crazy, but I think there's maybe just a small chance that these might have actually been faked.
Which is maybe not surprising when you actually come down and take a look at the seals here. So there is actually a seal on here, which I should just be able to pull out, right? So this, no, usually a vacuum seal is just a single O-ring between two things like this. So this is what your typical vacuum fittings actually look like there. Nice machine surfaces, usually you get an O-ring in there somewhere, and then another machine surface on the other side. So two machine surfaces basically on an O-ring is a good vacuum seal. And obviously once there's a vacuum in there, they'll hold together fairly well. But, just in case they don't, you can always put a clamp on there. But the thing that really kills it is this is just a Perspex window, and there is zero seal. There is zero chance this could hold a vacuum. And just to show you what we're dealing with here, this is just Perspex. It's not, can you see that? Yeah, there you go. So this is just like super lightweight Perspex. There is no vacuum seal on here. There is no vacuum when you just open this thing. So yeah, the vacuum dryer is not actually a vacuum dryer.
Now, what would be the odds of that?
That is clearly not a vacuum seal. So, interesting question. Do you hear any sound when you just pull this out? I'm going to open the bleeder valve. So let's try that. Let's get him started again. And we're just going to pull the tray. Yeah, it's just a bloody hairdryer. Right, now I'm just going to pull this thing out. And yeah, no vacuum at all. Why it wants me to insert the tank, there is nothing that can condense water in there. What the hell's the point of the tank?
And when the detachable tank is full, you just remove it, dump the water, and it's good to go.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to weigh my t-shirt, who weighs in at 215 grams. Just to show you that's fairly reproducible, goes down to 0. 216 grams. Excellent. Right, now I'm going to add some water to this, which will take us up to something else. There we go. So it's about 150 grams-ish. Not too much spilt. I'm going to absorb all of that into my t-shirt. And yeah, so it's about 150 grams of water, which is not a lot. Smart. So let's come back in 15 minutes and see what that does for us. Yeah, so you see, that is actually at the 7-minute 30 mark. Excellent, right. So, let's see how much drying we got done in 7 minutes 30 seconds. So he's still wet to the touch. And it's evaporated off, what was that? It's about 50 grams of water. So let's go for the rest of it. And okay, so we're approaching the other 7.5 minutes now. And I can tell you that all of the water, that it's evaporated all of that water into the room. And I can guarantee you that because I guarantee you that there is 0 water in it.
And when the detachable tank is full, you just remove it, dump the water, and it's good to go.
Guaranteed. Well, I'm stunned. It's absolutely bone dry.
Stop! He's already dead.
Not that surprising. There is 0 way this thing can condense water. But on the bright side, this is it's a little bit moist. I think it's done not too bad on actually evaporating the water, but all that it's noticeably humid in here. So that's actually in 15 minutes got all but 15 grams of the water off, which is not so bad, but it feels like Florida in a bloody heat wave here at the moment. So I think what I'll do next is I'll just get I'll get a humidity meter. Okay, so maybe rather surprisingly, it will actually dry a t-shirt in about 15 minutes, single t-shirt. But the way that it does that is by pumping the water straight out into the room. And to demonstrate that, here I've got my humidity data logger, which says the humidity is currently 41.5%. So let's get this guy going. And what do you reckon the humidity of the air coming out the back of this ventless dryer is?
And because it's ventless, there's no need for complicated pipe setups or installation.
Well, let's take a look, shall we? So let's just rotate him around. Oh. And bear in mind, this is only with a single t-shirt in there. Oh, I mean, you can feel it. It's like soup coming up out the back there. Already, it's twitchy.
She's twitching. I'm not finished!
It's like 60%, 70%.
Your Honor, this is important. You play on the gullibility of innocent people.
80%.
He's going critical. Engaging.
90%. 92. 93.
You're a son of justice.
100% humidity air. It's basically pumping 100% humidity air out the back of this thing. So much for the ventless dryer.
And because it's ventless.
Now I've got the transformer that keeps blurring my mains offline running at about 5 watts. And when I start this thing up, I've also changed the microphone over so you can help gauge the real noise of this thing versus the what I think it actually is, which is just a hairdryer in there. So when you first turn it on, it goes up to about 500 watts, and it'll go nuclear soon, and it'll go up to 1,500 watts, which is about the power that this thing runs at. So there we go. He's up to 1,300 watts now. This thing's gurgling down, which is actually quite a lot. Okay, so let's kill that, and let's plug in hairdryer. So our hairdryer, if we run him at full power, and full power on this one, it pulls down about 1,900 watts, but if I set this to medium power here, it's very comparable. But I know what you're thinking, this makes a lot more noise than the Morus. Well, okay, let's see what that's like if we actually stick that in there. And now all of a sudden, this sounds fairly familiar.
Cool, at which point we can drive another couple of stakes through the heart of this thing. Number one, we know that it'll boil off 150 grams of water in about 15 minutes, and it pulls in 1,300 watts of power while it's doing that. An hour is 3,600 seconds, but I'm lazy, so I'll call it 4,000. So a quarter of an hour at that is 1,000 seconds. So 1,300 watts for 1,000 seconds is 1.3 million joules. But again, I'm lazy, so I'll call it a million joules. Now, thermodynamically, to boil off a kilo of water takes about 2 million joules with perfect efficiency. So to boil off 150 grams, 0.15 kilos, would take about 0.3 million joules. This means this thing only runs at about 30% efficiency, just on evaporating the water off. This makes Morus one of the most power-hungry ways of evaporating water ever.
Automatically turns off the device. Say goodbye to overheating, energy waste.
Hell, if you want to recreate the Morus experience, just put a cup of water in a kettle and boil it off into your room over the period of 15 or so minutes. That's the sort of humidity increase you can expect from this thing. Second, they want to run this thing from an RV.
Taking the Morus Zero on the go with you is as easy as pie.
Sweetie, we're on vacation. Do you have to do this now?
Whoops. Sorry, honey.
But seriously, this thing is pretty nifty.
Really? 1,300 watts from an RV battery, running at about 12 volts, means that you have to pull in about 100 amps off a 12-volt battery to do this. And if you're thinking RV batteries can't do that, you're basically right. You would need either two heavy-duty batteries. Those are about $200 a shot, or you can go for one super modern battery, which will just about hack 100 amps, and that'll cost you about $600. Then, of course, you need your 2 kilowatt transformer, which will be another $200, and a further $600 for your Morus Zero. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to dry 5 t-shirts on that. You know, basically before your batteries get flat. Or you could just hang them out to dry, take about the same time, and save you well over $1,000, plus mean you don't have to maintain a high power system on your RV. Oh, and you don't have to worry about draining the batteries and carrying an almost pointless giant white brick around with you.
Okay, Morus, your joyous time has come. It's go time. Okay, and it's thicker than I thought. It might be 3 millimeters. Okay, excellent. So this really is a vacuum dryer. Then, when I put my finger over the hole, it should pull a vacuum, and when I take it off, you should hear it sucking. So we turn him on. So question, does it suck or blow? And the answer is, it does actually suck. There is a vacuum in here, but it is minuscule. So, let's widen up that hole. Actually, we might be able to do it just from here. Yeah, we can. So here is our vacuum meter, which goes from +1 atmosphere to -1 atmosphere. So a perfect vacuum will be all the way over here. And let's see what that does for space vacuum. So it does actually suck. Does it even move the needle? The answer is no. So just so we're clear what a real vacuum looks like, this is a real vacuum here. Real vacuum pump. And if we put the real vacuum pump on there, it pulls down to -1 atmosphere basically immediately. Whereas with Morus, not quite the same. So let's widen this hole out a bit and actually stick that all the way in. Almost. Almost perfect. Awesome. So now we have the vacuum dryer fitted with a vacuum pump, such that when we turn it on, we can see the awesome vacuum this system pulls. If you can't see anything, me neither. Right, next let's drill another hole and put a real vacuum pump on here, because I reckon this leaks way too much for any seal. Even if I would put a real vacuum pump on this, this won't be able to actually hold a vacuum. So I'm going to need a second hole. Good. So now we have our real vacuum pump.
And just so we're clear, this is exactly the same vacuum pump that I had on my vacuum oven earlier. So if this is a good sealed system, it should pump down at least this rate.
And put on the vacuum. Let's close the leader valve. You'll see that we suck down a vacuum fairly quickly. We're already down. And the answer is yeah, even if you put a real vacuum pump on there, it just leaks way too much. And just to show you that is actually a working vacuum pump on there. If we open this guy up, actually pulling a decent vacuum. But the whole rest of the system, there are no seals on the inside here. That thing, I'm pretty sure, is just a big empty, yeah, there's big vents on the back of it. So if I just leave it pumping down on this for a bit, you'll see there's absolutely no movement on any of this. So put simply, this is the sort of vacuum that Morus can pull. This sort of vacuum here. This is the sort of vacuum that Morus can pull. That sort of vacuum. Odd how that works.
The Morus Zero uses vacuum technology. No, not that vacuum. Space vacuum.
Not only that, it was going to have infrared heating.
Combined with its infrared heating system.
And ultraviolet sterilization.
We haven't even started.
I've not even looked under the bonnet of this thing yet. It's meant to be low temperature, so it's a gentle dryer. Condense water somehow. I mean, anyone fancy taking a bet with me that when I do get inside this thing, it'll be the exact components of a hairdryer. Yeah, this thing wasn't cheap to get a hold of or to get running. But when you look at it and realize this thing pulled in over $2 million, and they're still pushing this thing really hard in Japan. Yeah, I figure this one's worth a full autopsy. And that's today's video. If you enjoyed it, drop a thumbs up on it. Subscribing is a good idea if you don't want to miss out on more great videos like this one. And as ever, if you really like the work of this channel and want to support it directly, you can do it through Patreon. And thanks for watching.